It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of August 4th, 2000. We got 3 movies to look at today, so let's go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Shue in Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man. See, Sony did the R-rated Invisible Man before Universal did 20 years prior to this. I mean, you know, Sony, I talked about it before, Sony pretty much did the Dark Universe better before Universal tried to do it with their movies, because, think about it, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Wolf, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Hollow Man, they did that much better than anything that Universal could have done. I mean, they screwed up with one movie, the Tom Cruise Mummy, and Sony did it way better before they did it, but I digress here. Hollow Man, it is pretty much just an R-rated version of The Invisible Man. Before the R-rated Invisible Man, you have Kevin Bacon as the scientist who volunteers to be the first test subject for a serum that renders the user invisible. When his fellow scientists are unable to restore him back to normal, he becomes increasingly unstable and eventually goes on a killing spree. And, it definitely has some interesting ideas to it. I think this movie is a lot better than people give it credit for. I mean, it was a hit when it came out, but it got really, really bad reviews, except from, of all people, David Manning, who, of course, praised a ton of different Sony movies back then until it was later revealed that he was actually a guy that was basically created by Sony to fake publicity for the films that they had at the time, even though Sony did have a couple movies back then that were actually kind of good, that would not gotten the best reviews, including this one here, but, I mean, it does take a lot of the ideas that I think the Invisible Man movie, the Jason Blum one, would actually take and do in their own unique way to it. This one is definitely a little bit more smuttier than that. It's a little bit more raunchier. I mean, Kevin Bacon basically turns into a sexual predator at times during this movie, and it's uncomfortable at times, but at the same time, it's kind of fun to watch in a guilty pleasure kind of way here. I think Paul Verhoeven clearly knows that. I mean, this is the guy that gave us Basic Instinct and Starship Troopers, movies that weren't really all that smart to begin with, but at times can be smart, but mostly were there for kind of not for what the original intention was. I mean, this is the guy that also did RoboCop and Total Recall, too, so he's had some pretty good movies under his name at this point. I mean, Showgirls probably was his biggest blunder up to this point. Was that even... Yeah, it was him. Okay, I thought Joe Esterhaus directed that one, but no. But Hollow Man has some pretty fun ideas overall. The visuals overall are impressive to look at. I mean, that scene where Kevin Bacon basically becomes the invisible person surprisingly still holds up after all these years. It's interesting to watch, but at the same time, it's also really intense and terrifying at the same time. I mean, throughout the course of the movie, it's pretty intense and terrifying. I mean, they do a pretty good job of handling this in terms of the visual department. Story-wise, it's kind of been there, done that before. We've seen this done before. And I do think that The Invisible Man did take a lot of the ideas in this and made it into its own thing with that film. And I think that in comparing the two movies, I would probably say that as much as I like the 2020 Invisible Man movie, I would probably say of the two, this is the one I'd probably watch more because of just what they were able to do with it. The visuals kind of still hold up. The scare factor still holds up in here. Not to say that the one in The Invisible Man, the 2020 one, didn't do that either. It's still a really good movie. I do recommend checking that one out, but in comparing the two, I would probably take this one over the original over that Invisible Man movie. Just barely, though. I mean, they're both not great films, but they're fun movies to watch in terms of what they do with the story and what they do with the idea here. Not the best overall story in either one of those films, but you get you get a little bit of the fun factor here and a little bit of the guilty pleasureness here as well. It's an entertaining movie. It's a good, fun summer horror film. I mean, it's a really enjoyable film overall. Definitely has a lot of flaws to it in terms of the story department, but when it works pretty well for what they're trying to accomplish here. I think the visuals still hold up pretty well for the most part. I think the tension is still very good in here. I think they did a pretty good job of handling this. I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed this one. So that's my thoughts on Hollow Man. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Clint Eastwood's Space Cowboys. So, fun fact about this one actually made the most money out of all the movies that came out on this weekend, even though it opened right in the middle of the pack. This is the one that still held up. It had the legs going forward, and it went on to become the biggest success out of all three films that came out this weekend, grossing double its budget of $60 million to about $130 million. And you have Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, and James Garner as four older ex-test pilots who are sent into space to repair an old Soviet satellite. I actually did go to see this movie when I was 11 years old. My dad took me, my sister to this when we had the movie theater down the street here, and I remember enjoying it for the most part, but I never really went back to watching it full until maybe a couple of years ago, just to see if it held up after all these years. And I gotta say, man, even though the story very much is a very generic storyline, it does manage to do enough to really say, you know what, this definitely deserves an end. This is what I think of when I think of a really good Clint Eastwood movie. I mean, this is what you expect from a older Clint Eastwood film. He's not doing anything too much in this compared to some of his work that he's done recently. Like, a lot of his movies recently have not been that great, like Richard Jewell and The Mule. I don't think were great. The Mule and Cry Macho, I think, was another one that I thought was. None of them were really bad per se, but they just really didn't. It just really had the ebb and flow of some of Eastwood's best works. And I think this is definitely up there with one of Eastwood's best works overall. Again, kind of like with Hollow Man, the story really isn't anything too special or unique, but it just works because of the camaraderie between the four stars here. Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, and James Garner, I think, work off each other very well. Another movie with William Devane in it. He was in Hollow Man, too. And you also have Lauren Dean, Courtney B. Vance, James Cromwell, Marcia Gay Harden. Solid cast overall here. I really enjoy this one a lot. I think it does definitely hold up after all these years. I think it is a solidly made film. It doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of story, anything unique or groundbreaking overall, but when it works pretty well. I think it does a really good job of telling the story, and you do get really invested with the characters involved in here. I think the visuals also are very good too. It's another movie that I'd say it's a good fun film. It's a good film that works to Clint Eastwood's advantages. I think it works to all these actors' advantages. It works really well. I do recommend checking it out. So, my thoughts on that one on Space Cowboys. Let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, and that is Coyote Ugly. So, Coyote Ugly basically it's a romantic comedy about a girl in her early 20s named Violet Sanford, played by Piper Perabo, who goes to New York City to pursue her dream of becoming a songwriter, and Violet gets a day job as a barmaid at a nightclub called Coyote Ugly. Coyote Ugly is the city's newest hotspot, where the employees are a team of sexy, resourceful women that provoke the clientele, impressed with their mischief. Mischief being that they're dancing around, making the bars here. It's basically kind of the female equivalent to something like Cocktail. And, I guess Disney saw how successful Cocktail was and said, you know, let's do it again, but this time let's put these ladies involved in here. And a good cast overall here. Piper Perabo is in this movie. You also have Maria Bello, Melanie Linsky, John Goodman, Tyra Banks, Bridget Moynihan, Isabella Miko, Adam Garcia. A pretty good cast overall here, but really when you look at this movie, it pretty much is just simply a cock tease movie. I mean, it's literally a movie where most of the time the women in here are basically just. I think someone said it best here about the criticism and praises. It's basically a hot, sexy woman dancing in a bar at a wet T-shirt contest. I mean, it's a trashy movie. It's a trashy movie, but at the same time, though, there is something kind of interesting about it. There's something kind of mesmerizing about it. I don't know what the best way to describe it is. It's just like, you know that line that Rosario Dawson had when they go in Clerks 2, when they have the party, I think it's the bachelor party inside the restaurant, and she's like, I'm disgusted, I'm repulsive, and yet I can't look away. Some people might look at this and say that's exactly what this movie is kind of being. I mean, it's certainly not a disgusting movie, but it is a pretty straightforward film. I mean, it's a movie that's basically a TNA film, but at the same time, there's nothing really all that bad about it per se. There's something about it that just, you know, you get so invested. You're watching this, and sorry about that. I had something in my eye there for a second there, but lost my train of thought. But it's a weird movie. I'll give it that. It's a film that should not work. It's a film that's kind of like, it doesn't have a really good storyline overall, but there's just something about it that you just keep watching it, and all of a sudden you're just mesmerized by it. I don't know if it's because I'm a guy, and they're throwing, TNA on the screen. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm along for the ride here. But I don't know if that's the case per se, but it's just something that's kind of interesting to me. Like, I don't know what it is. I can't really put my mind to it on why I don't hate this movie. I don't like it, but it's one of those movies it's kind of like Hollow Man, honestly. It's kind of a guilty pleasure film that really, it has a lot of things about it that are really bizarre. Not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes. Like, apparently 8 writers worked on the script, including Kevin Smith, who did an uncredited rewrite, Jeff Nathanson, who would later go on to do Rush Hour 3, and of all people, Carrie Fisher wrote a draft of this movie. I mean, it's a weird conglomerate of different people here, different styles. You have Kevin Smith and then Carrie Fisher working on a movie like this, and it's a weird concept. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, I think the movie obviously knows what it's trying to go for here, and I think because of that, you kind of go along with the ride for it. I mean, we have a lot of movies similar to this come out around the same time. A couple weeks from now, we're going to be talking about Bring It On, which is a film that really should not be something I would normally go and see, but it's a movie that I see, and it's just kind of like, this movie has a lot more to it than I could have ever thought it was. But the differences between that movie and this movie is that Bring It On actually has elements about it that are actually kind of good at the same time. In here, not so much. I mean, it's a weird movie to really put my finger around here. I shouldn't like it. I think it's a really badly written storyline, but it just works. It works on the levels that they're trying to put out here. I mean, I can't really say it's a great movie per se, but I can honestly say that it's a fun movie. It's a guilty pleasure film, to say the least. And I think a lot of people have the right to criticize it for what it did, but at the same time, the film kind of knows what you're going in for, and I can't really say it's a bad film, but I can't really say it's a good film either. Like I said, it's a guilty pleasure film, so yeah, not a good film, but not a bad film either. It's definitely one of those guilty pleasure films. I'll give it that. So that's my thoughts on Coyote Ugly. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll have 3 more movies, including Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman in the football comedy The Replacements. We also have Autumn in New York, and also Kim Basinger in Bless the Child. So 3 films to take a look at, and we'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So don't go too far away, because coming up after I upload this, there's going to be a new episode of Time About the Movies Flashback, where we'll take a look at A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Dream Street, a completely different movie altogether if you knew who Dream Street was, the late 90s, early 2000s fan, but no. The Dream Master is what I'm trying to say here. We also have Married to the Mob, The Big Blue, and Vincent, as we look back to August 19th, 1988. So that's going to be coming up after I post this, so stick around, because that's going to be coming up right after this.